for Nairobi. I don't know the places of worship were ethnicized in Nairobi. So to me, that was a new experience. Like when I was new here and I was coming and I was hearing about, like these ethnicized churches. So for us, for Muslims, there's some type of uniformity and some comfort. Annette, you told me that young people here are disconnecting from their families and saying that they can't have relationships with their parents. These are, like second generation parents, and their first generation kids. So you're saying that there's a disconnect that's happening. Like what exactly did you mean that people can no longer have relationships with their parents?
I think there is a point in time where, for example, in previous generations, if you live in the context of Kenya and you grown up in Kenya, you don't have the ability to compare yourself to other individuals and the type of the relationships that they were having with their parents. And so I've had the ability to see and have very intimate relationships with people. And when I say intimate, I mean the types of conversations that we were having there was no limit on a topic that we could not discuss. And this is now with the parents of my peers. So when I go home, and this can be at any level, this can be in elementary school, and you realize that I know for me, when I was in elementary school, I had friends who were very physically affectionate with their parents, and I didn't grow up in a home that was like that. And so when I saw it, and then I was like, oh man, that's something I'm craving. I would love to have really long hugs and kisses and stuff like that. And my Kenyan parents,
Kenyan parents.
Like, I don't know what this is that you're bringing into this house, but we don't do that, you know. But the only reason why I was able to one of the main reasons why I was able to have that is because of the comparison of the culture that I was seeing outside. And it's not that the outside culture is bad, it's just that the context is different. And so again, the parents who have made the decision to bring their families here for wonderful reasons that they've done that, it's on them. It's their obligation, because they're the older ones and the wiser ones, to help fill in that gap. And there's some places that you don't see the blind spots. We've talked about that. So this is not a matter of pinpointing blind spots and shaming you for not seeing them. This is a matter of, there's some things that can be very, very obvious that maybe need to be broached, and maybe you have to work on yourself individually, or just even have a conversation with your kid and be like, listen, this is not something that I can do in my culture. Or let me not say in my culture, I dislike that phrase. In the culture we come from, is a better phrase. Don't say in my culture, it separates you, because it's my culture versus you and your culture. And what culture does your child have? Okay, they're not Americans, so what culture does your child have? Don't say in my culture. In the culture we come from, it's very difficult for us to have these conversations directly as a parent to a child. But what we did do is, you had uncles and you had aunties. And so these are some people that I think that might be good for you to talk to. Okay. And I might even let them know, hey, my kid has some questions that are beyond me. Please, when they come to you, feel free. Even just giving that permission to that auntie, feel free. You guys talk whatever you guys are going to talk. Because for me, this is beyond me. I cannot do it. And that's okay.
Okay. But now where do we draw the line in as far as, also being empathetic to the parents? Like, you don't just start, if you come from a place where you don't see you don't see dads giving long hugs to their daughters. This is not something that you can just pick up overnight,
right.
And start doing.
Right.
So at what point do we also give the parents grace, in that they're trying their best to make it comfortable for you here, but there's certain things that they will miss, not because they don't want to do it, but it's just that after there's so many years, if your parent is like 50 or 60 years old, after all those years of conditioning to live in a certain way, it's just hard to flip a switch.
I would say, at what point in time do you realize your children have been giving you grace this whole time?
No.
And this is,
But I'm talking here on the parents' context.
I understand,
Yes.
but I'm saying
Yeah.
as a child,
Yeah.
at what point in time do the parents recognize that the child has been giving them grace this whole time? Because the child is the only person who understands that this parent has never been to school. This person has never faced these things that I face. This parent has never prepared me for racism the way that I've experienced it in school because they didn't know. This parent does not have the ability to understand the nuance of language. You can speak the English language and not understand the culture behind it.
Yeah.
So we understand that. We've been understanding this whole time that we've been growing up here. So the truth of the matter is there is so much grace that is being given to our parents this entire time. In addition to that, we've been told, you have to understand when we came from Kenya. You have to understand when we were walking those 5 kilometers. You have to understand, you have to understand, you have to understand. So this whole time we have been conditioned that we have to take the burden of understanding our parents. And there has not been a point in time where our parents have said, let me take the time to understand you.
So is there anything that the parents are doing right? You know, is there
many
anything?
things. Oh my gosh, so many things. So the things our parents are doing right. Apart from saying my culture, we have a culture that's so beautiful. It's so lively. We have our bracelets. All of us wear them. It's like if you don't have one, you cannot be one of us. We have an ability to kind of skip some of the identity crisis that occurs with amongst our peers because we, as those who are Black American, those who came from Africa, not by choice. We have the ability to say, you know, we came here by choice. We have these cultures. We have these histories and why we got here. Some of us are green card holders. Some of us are, you know, our parents rebelled against the government. Some people were, you know, diplomats. There's a rich history and culture as to why it is that we got here. And it's super exciting to be able to have that. And then also to be able to share that. And not to be confused about who it is that we are. So we identify as American because we are here and this is the place that we love. Yeah. And that's amazing. But we also know that there's another place for us. There's another home. There's an ancestral land. Yeah. There's a whole nother culture that we can you know, dive into. So for example, right now that we're living in a time whereby books are being banned by authors who look like us. Who come from you know, the U.S. and have been here for hundreds of years. And, you know, in Kenya, though, there are some books that have not been banned, you know, that I can go and reach out to and still be able to feel some sort of connection. Yeah. And that has been amazing. Our parents have, you know, they didn't come here and start learning how to cook burgers immediately. So we still have our food. We still have nyama choma. We still have ugali and skuma and all of that is super important and rich. And we have our get-togethers, we have our gatherings, we have our cookouts, we have our barbecues, we have our language. There's so many good and beautiful things. And I think it is a mistake to focus on the negative. When someone brings you a criticism, it doesn't mean that you're a bad person. It means we have an area that we can improve upon. And it's up to you to decide that you want to improve upon that thing or if you want to leave that thing alone.
Okay. All right. So, yeah. So, I mean, this is a conversation that I think could be like a manual to both sides, you know, like if you're a first gener and if you're a parent, not even necessarily a parent, just someone who has any interaction with first generation Kenyans, you know, it could be anyway. It could be through social settings, it could be through entertainment, it could be through, you know, like religious practices. Now, you know, like I sometimes, you know, like I've had these kinds of conversations, these private conversations with first gen Kenyans who are Muslims, because now they're dealing with a couple of different things. Right. They're dealing with the fact that they come from a different country, a different culture, and then also a different religion, you know. And of course, Muslims are a minority of a minority in the U.S. We are very few. We are still very few, in as much as people tend to think that we're so many. We still tend to be very few.
Ethnic groups.
Yeah, and I think an advantage, I feel, and I think this is a conversation that can be better had by a Muslim first gener, but just from conversations I've had with them, I think an advantage that we tend to have is that culturally, as Muslims, regardless of whatever part of the world you come from, there's certain things that we have in common. So there's always a tendency for Muslims to settle in places where there's a mosque, whereby you can go interact. So you'll still find certain people who share certain aspects of your culture, like in good numbers. So that tends to play, like a certain advantage, because you're not making big changes as a Muslim, like coming from Kenya to a Muslim coming to settle in the United States. And an interesting thing that I was mentioning to a friend of mine, there's no such thing as a Kenyan mosque. There's no such thing as a Tanzanian mosque or a Cameroonian mosque. The way we have it with churches, it's whatever mosque is in that community that you've gone, that's where you go and attend. Like that's something that I think also, like baffles us, like as Muslims, when we see these ethnicized places of worship, like churches and other places of worship. So it kind of, like gets us a bit off guard, especially coming from Kenya. I don't know whether places of worship were ethnicized. Let me speak for Nairobi. I don't know whether places of worship were ethnicized in Nairobi. So to me, that was a new experience. Like when I was new here and I was coming and I was hearing about, like these ethnicized churches. So for us, for Muslims, there's some type of uniformity and some comfort that you'll still find, but then now you have to deal with all these other issues outside your community, whereby you're not an American, and then again you're also not practicing the faith that a majority of people are practicing out there. So you also have to deal with that.
That's a lot of layers, and I think because I'm not from that community, what I can speak to is in the Catholic Church we have, you can just find whatever Catholic church is near you.
Yeah.
You go to whatever service is there, and for the most part, it's going to be in English. But we do have churches that will have a Spanish service, and there are some churches that will do a Swahili service, and it might not be every day. It might be, once a month.
Okay.
And in that once a month, that's where you will find all of the East Africans have gone to the Swahili service or things of that nature. And what I have found, even in the Catholic Church, for example, there are some priests that I know who are from East Africa, Kenya or Tanzania, but they also speak Spanish and English, and maybe they've been stationed. I know one who lives somewhere in the Midwest, and so he has a congregation that there are a lot of Spanish people, and so he speaks Spanish, English, and he also speaks Swahili. And so yeah, that is something that I think is a little bit similar when it comes to compare what you're discussing. We kind of just all go to the same place if you are Catholic. For those who are non-Catholic, that's where you kind of see more of that. That separation, and it's honestly, it's not an African thing, and so we have white churches, we have black churches.